Okay. Hello again, my audience. This is part 2 of my ISTJ, ENFP interview. In case you didn't watch part 1, I am Paul, the ISTJ, and this is Dan and Evelyn. They're the two ENFPs. And since we have a time constraint, I'm just going to get right to the point. So, we are on talking about extroverted thinking, which for you two would be your third function, which is referred to as the tertiary function, which means basically it's good enough. It's not bad, but it's sometimes referred to as the childish function because the way it's used is sort of like how a kid would. And it's something that you have to take effort to use it, but it's surprisingly...
What do you mean as a kid would?
Like, okay, let me give you an example. Let's say that rhetorically you were to lead with extroverted feeling.
Okay.
That would mean that the kid would probably be like, "Mommy, I just want to make the whole world happy," and then the kid would like do something totally rash, and Mom's like, "No, you can't be doing that." So then she would have to discipline the kid.
Okay.
That's
so like,
kind of sort of like how the tertiary function
is that saying that when we think extrovertedly, we'll do that kind of immaturely?
I'm talking about in terms of the feeling. The thinking.
So when we're extroverted thinking, trying to explain our thoughts, we'll do that kind of immaturely?
Kind of.
I can definitely say that that's true.
Because, like, the example I gave in the previous take was that we were planning out a prayer meeting, and you had a notebook of, like, everything you wanted to plan out. But the thing is, you didn't want to keep it to yourself. You, like, wanted to talk it out with me and say, like, do you think this is a good idea? So you needed to externally process your thoughts.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, like, it's not like something that comes naturally. It's something you had to develop.
It's something that I know I need to develop when I'm in something with a group because I would go and do everything, you know.
And you wouldn't necessarily plan things out. Because extroverted thinkers are more about like timetables and like organized guidelines, whereas introverted thinkers are more like they develop their own systems for working things out.
So I definitely think the writing things out and having it super organized, that's how I write out all my assignments and like schedule and when I'm going to do what. And then even after that, I bounce it off other people. There's definitely a high level of organization in my thoughts.
And I journal things like crazy, and journal my feelings like crazy, and I don't feel like I get much out of it, but I do it all the time. But I don't feel like it ever really gives you peace. It's like just something I do all the time, but it doesn't actually help.
So Evelyn, would you say extroverted thinking is slightly difficult for you, but would you say it works really well when you do use it?
Well, I think I talked about this in our last take. I think that I have forced myself to develop it because of what I've learned the turbulent function does. Because if you have that self-doubting, you know, like insecurity, then you can't trust your thoughts just if they're internalized. You have to externalize them because like you want to have them organized and really, really look at it logically. Is this good? Or bounce out of other people. Have them give you that affirmation. Yes, that sounds good. And so that constant need to express your thoughts outwardly in order to have them affirmed and have more confidence, I think has made that a stronger function for me. So.
Oh, very nice.
I don't know for sure, but I feel like it is because I don't think I have a problem doing it. Like you said, it shouldn't be that strong for me, but I really relate to it. So.
Well, they say that it's good to develop your tertiary functions to the point where it becomes more easier to do it, because then that can lead to healthier relationships.
That's cool.
So for me, extroverted thinking is my secondary function, which means it comes very naturally for me to process my thoughts out loud. In fact, that's what this video is it's an extroverted thinking manner, because I'm sharing it with a whole bunch of people.
Okay.
And that's also usually like I take in a lot of information, and then the extroverted thinking is how it comes out. But because feeling is more towards the bottom, sometimes it comes out as very rude and uncaring, and then I'll usually have to apologize or something like that. So moving on to the inferior function, this is where you might start giggling a bit. But introverted sensing, the inferior function, is typically... Introverted sensing is a function that deals with facts and like legit data as opposed to like presumptions and vagueness. But introverted sensing is also like an awareness of what's around you in like the concrete reality. Like, this is a couch.
Yeah.
That's a floor. And I'll actually answer this before you two do. I was noticing your lack of introverted sensing when you guys kept spilling water over yourselves. Because you weren't aware of like the proximity of the cup to your mouth.
I think I lack awareness of my surroundings a lot of the time, but in terms of concrete facts, that's disgusting. In terms of concrete facts, like, if somebody, like, in certain situations, I can't think of an exact example, but, like, there's some where you want that concreteness, and in your day-to-day life, I'm not looking for it, and I end up, like, spilling water on myself and being clumsy and whatever, but say, like, you're approaching an assignment, and I don't like vagueness in what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I like to be told, here's the outline, here's what is required if you do it. Like, that there needs to be that concreteness in what I'm expected of from other people, but I certainly don't look for it in situations on a day-to-day basis, only when it's called for, like in an assignment or a project.
So that would be one of your crisis mode functions.
Yeah, that makes sense then.
Like, you know how I told you in the previous take that when I get into extreme stress, my intuition takes over, and then it ends up, like, thinking of every single possibility of what could possibly go wrong.
That makes a lot of sense, so that when I'm in a situation of stress, like wanting to get things done,
yeah,
that comes out.
Because introverted sensing and extroverted thinking would become your go-tos in that.
Yeah, they definitely, yeah, they only come out when I'm, like, really, like, trying to do something on a day-to-day basis. Is like, nope, spill water.
So what about you, Dan? Where would you say introverted sensing, like, actually comes out, and, like, how can you see it as a weakness? Because it's your inferior function.
If I'm understanding you right, you're saying that introverted sensing is being aware of the little things that are going on all around
Introverted sensing is, if it's at the bottom, it's usually the lack of awareness of not only facts, but, like, what's around you, and...
Yeah, so I was going to say that maybe that was definitely something when I actually started getting into the classroom, was like, I knew that that's where I needed to grow in, because when you're teaching, like, a lot of it is fun and feeling and sensing and stuff, but you need data to decide what to do next. So you need to be constantly making concrete assessments. This kid's getting it, this kid's not. You need to make those informally, you need to make them formally. Then you use that data to decide what to do next. So it's like, you can't teach if you can't do that. So, like, I started doing that, and habitually now, over the course of the past year, that's become big. And then also, like, I can relate to the not being aware thing when it was like last year in October I was doing a spelling lesson, and I'm doing it and I'm all excited and stuff about spelling, and I'm like jumping all over the place, and it's like it's the greatest lesson, it's the greatest spelling lesson ever given, right? And then I looked down and there was like a kid in the front row who was just staring the whole time, didn't have his spelling stuff out, he wasn't doing anything, and I had no idea till the end of the lesson that I was like, Hussein, where's your board? Why aren't you spelling? He's like, oh, okay. So, so then I was like, okay, I need to not just go do that thing. I need to be able to pay attention to their desks. So it's like, it's specifically in that domain, I know I gotta be making eye contact with them and their eyes and their desks.
Ah, yes. Now it all makes sense, because in the previous take you kept talking about, like, I need to focus on eye contact, but I didn't understand what it meant in context.
Okay, yeah.
So now it makes more sense.
Yeah, you make eye contact, you know if they're like, yeah, or
yeah,
if they're like,
yeah,
they're really
that makes
into the
sense.
lesson.
So, to sort of contrast, being an ISTJ, introverted sensing is my dominant function, which means, like, I go to it without even thinking about it. Basically, introverted sensing is taking in everything around me from a very literal, concrete fashion, and typically will only trust what I know for a fact to be true. And as a result, because I have inferior intuition, I tend to reject experimentation and new stuff, whereas if you have inferior sensing, you're typically not going to want to stick to, like, an established plan or too much restrictions. You're going to want to, like, feel free to branch out your ideas. Would you say that that's accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Can you, like, specify more?
So, for example, when I go on a walk with my best friend, I typically take the exact same route, the exact same place, every single time.
I do stuff like that, though.
But do you also like...
I don't like that.
I do.
When I'm going for a walk,
like
it's
I said,
always different directions.
I wear the same jewelry for months on end. I take the same route when I ride my bike to exercise.
Well, maybe you really
I have the
developed
same
your
background
sensing.
on my phone for 2 years.
I don't have the same background on my phone for like 3 days.
Alright, so because we're on a time constraint, I'd love to elaborate on this, but I guess we can do that off camera. Let's briefly get into the extroversion and the perceiving, because those sort of encompass all of the functions in general. Because when Carl Jung originally envisioned the types, he didn't have perceiving and judging in the types. It was only the first 3 letters. So in his original theory, you guys would only just be ENFs. But to make it more systematic, Isabel and whoever the other person is that made it Myers-Briggs, they added the P and the J to help keep track of the functions. That if they knew you're ENFPs instead of ENFJs, that completely switches the functions, because ENFJs have no functions in common with ENFPs. So perceiving in its utmost nature is more of a preference to take in and then act, as opposed to judgers where they act first, think later. But perceiving types in general come across as very spontaneous and go with the flow, because they prefer to take it in and then make a decision. So would you say that that's accurate for you two? Like, we'll start with you, Dan. How does that manifest itself in your life, having a preference for spontaneity and go with the flow, as opposed to like being structured, organized, and like knowing things ahead of time?
I guess if you're saying structured, you're kind of like, you know what I mean? If say, like, go back to, like, you go into the classroom, you have a plan of what you'll do. Say you're going to student teaching, and if you're structured, you're J, you're saying that, like, you'd go in saying, this is what I'm going to do today. And if you're like me, you'd rather just kind of, like, go in and not really want to absorb what the teacher's doing, what the kids are doing, how the kids respond to me and stuff before you really start strongly acting.
Yeah. Before you answer, Evelyn, I wanted to notice an example today where, like, this might cause more laughter, but we had talked for, like, I think 15 minutes straight about going to get coffee. And then we got on our coats, and we went outside after discussing for, like, 10 minutes of that time who's going with who.
Well, that's why I was like,
and
this
then
is too complicated, we're not getting coffee.
And then we finally got outside, and then you guys were like, let's just not get coffee. And
no, that annoys me though, because I'm like very stubborn to things, like the phone background, say the same, say the same. So like not like severe annoyance, but I was kind of just like, okay.
Well, didn't you say you scored borderline J and P when you were in high school?
Yeah, I have a borderline, but that doesn't make sense to me. If you said they have totally opposite functions, then how could you be borderline with something that determines everything?
Because the letter at the end is not necessarily determining whether you're spontaneous or structured. It's to put into perspective your functions. So the functions you've described make sense to you. But overall, perceiving types are much more go with the flow, and they don't prefer to have...
I can, but I will say that, like, I like to make a structure. If something happens that means that that structure no longer can apply, I don't think I freak out that badly. It would depend on, like, how big of a deal it was. Like, I can jump in and be like, okay, let's try another route. So that there's definitely that spontaneity there, but that doesn't mean that I don't try to approach with a structure from the beginning. It's just that if that fails through, then I don't, you know, like, I'll still be like, okay, we'll do it the other way, but I still wanted it to be the other way. But that doesn't mean, like, I can't then think of an alternative.
I really think I don't like structures where there don't need to be a structure. I think that if something's simple, it could just be very simple. And when there's a lot of structure involved in it, it's just like...
Well, hanging out with people, like, I don't make plans when I hang out with people. I'm just like, let's hang out with people. We're going to just talk.
As opposed to me where I have an itinerary for, like, everything.
I think that's what happened with the coffee. It was like, I just want to go run up and grab a coffee. And then we talked about it for 15 minutes. So this is what we did.
Okay, so we have, like, 4 minutes left. So let's briefly talk about extroversion. So because ENFPs are we said that in the previous take. Let me see if I can reword it. So, you two have an extroverted preference. So what would you say, like, defines extroversion? Because Carl Jung defined it as the need to be around people to regain energy. So how would you say that that manifests itself in your life? What are some examples of that you could share with the audience in 4 minutes' time? So don't try to expand too much on that.
Well, one time I really needed some prayer, and I went off into the Capuchin retreat, and I had a room, and I walked around for a whole day. I got there early, I got there like 11 o'clock, and I walked around the whole day, and by about 8 o'clock, like, I was just drained, you know, and I was like, I gotta get back home. So I was gonna stay the whole next day, but I came back home the next morning, because I was like...
So you needed that interaction time, and it was just too reflective for you?
Yeah, it was really good, but after I kind of went in with questions, I got my answers, and it was like, I need to go home.
Would you say that you're outgoing, or is it more that you're just people-focused? Because extroverted doesn't always mean outgoing. there can be shy extroverts. So would you say you're a shy extrovert, or you say you're like a stereotypical extrovert?
I don't know.
Because I used to think you were introverted when I first met you because you were very
It's
quiet.
like what you were talking about, soaking it in before you start acting in the environment, maybe?
Yeah. What about you, Evelyn? Would you say that your extroversion plays out in that need to be around big groups of people, or are you more like a shy extrovert where you need the people but you're not necessarily very outgoing and talkative?
Well, like, I can say that when I'm with a large group of people, I do feel energized, but I don't feel like I need to be energized, like, you know, to recharge. Because I feel completely content being alone for very long periods of time. You know, it'll take a long time before I start to feel antsy and need to be with people. But I still feel, when I'm with people, like, super spike of energy. The thing is, that spike is so high that then I need to be alone after. Because it's like, boom, I get exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know what that means, but...
It gets the job done. So anyway, audience, thank you very much for watching our wonderful interview. Thank you. Can I say your name?
Yes.
Thank you, Autumn, for being the camera person. So, you can give a closing statement like I did before. Mine is always the same. Keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless.
God bless you.